All right, everybody. So this really boring map that you see is actually one of the most useful homesteading tools that I've found in a long time. It's a totally free tool that is almost impossible to find on search engines for some reason, and it needs a little bit of guidance for you to know how to use it and get it all set up. So let's just jump right in and I'll show you what I'm looking at right now. I'm currently in the Sparta, Tennessee area as far as the map that I'm looking at. And there's something really cool that I came across the other day when I was driving, and I'm going to use it as an illustrative tool for how to use this system. So first of all, I'll put a link in the description so that you can get to the site easily. Next, you're going to go over to the top right-hand side, and there's this little icon. It looks kind of like a sandwich. If you hover over it, it says layers. Go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to show you my top 3 layers that I use. Feel free to mess around with it and play with it over time and figure out if other layers make sense for you. But here's my top 3. One is the imagery NAIP plus layer. So I'm going to enable that, and you enable it by clicking the little eye on the right-hand side of that given layer. So now you can see it's a very boring satellite image. So that doesn't seem real exciting, does it? Well, I want to show you something with this that I think is kind of mind-blowing. It's LiDAR. And contours. So let me show you how to use those. So there's the imagery. That's going to give you the satellite imagery of the area. You might actually already see on screen what I'm getting at here, which is some swales on both sides of the road. They're really interesting for a specific reason, which I'll divulge in a minute here. So the other items that I like are the 3DEP elevation hillside stretched. This is actually the LiDAR tab or the LiDAR layer. There's several others, but this one shows things a lot better, gives you a much better visual evaluation. So I'm going to enable that. And you probably noticed nothing happened. Well, that's part of the trick in knowing how to use this tool. You've actually got to come over here to the 6 little dots and grab it and move it up to above the other layer. So where the layers sit on this hierarchy is how they show up. Now, maybe I want to see both kind of combined. I can come over here to opacity, and I can turn the opacity down and see LiDAR overlaid with the satellite imagery, which is really helpful because you're going to notice something here. And this is what I was after, was as I drove by, I had this curiosity over here. So over here, if I turn off the LiDAR, you'll notice very green, lush, really nice. Over here, denuded, dry soil, and they both have the swales, which you would think would be helpful. So when I turn this on and I turn the opacity down just a little bit, I can very clearly, with the LiDAR, see the swales here and what they're doing and how they work. And I can also very clearly see damage to these swales right here that would mean that these swales aren't working. But there's one more thing I need to check with these swales to make sure that they're doing what I think they're doing. So you can have on-contour swales which hold, spread out, slow down, and soak in water, rehydrating the landscape, which create this really nice, more lush landscape overall, and less erosion, things like that. But you can also have off-contour swales, which are more intended to push water off in a specific way. So I want to see if these are on contour or off contour. And I'm going to do that by going over here to contours. I'm going to pull this up. And again, if I put it on, you don't see it. So I'm going to drag it to the top where you can see them, and you can see the contours. So now that I can see the contours and I can see the LiDAR imagery, you can see that the contours match basically perfectly with these swales. So now I know that these are definitely on contour swales and that they're intended to slow spread and soak in water. So I'm actually going to turn off the contours now. So that's my third item that I really like using, is the contours overlay. Again, you have to pull it up above the other layers to see it, to make it an overlay. Otherwise, it gets covered by those layers. So now I have all the information I need to know that what's happening is these are on contour swales and they've actually been damaged. And this field is probably worse off for having the swales than if it didn't have them at all with this damage going through the middle. What it appears to me is that somebody took a bulldozer and just did a bulldozer right through the middle of this, and to create a path to this area. And what you can see is these swales are picking up the water, bringing it to this consolidated place, and then it's running down and actually causing all kinds of erosion down here. And it's not rehydrating the landscape because it's just being pushed off down this pathway. Without the LiDAR, this is what I would have seen. These swales would have looked basically fine. I wouldn't be able to see the difference in them. So that's just one example of many things that we can do with the software, but it gives a quick illustration of what my curiosity or my eye caught as I was driving by, and gives me an explanation for something that I could not see from my car, which is that pathway that has been plowed through these swales and done damage to this landscape, explaining the difference in quality of soil between these two places. Now, there may be additional factors like this is being overgrazed and this not being grazed or not being heavily grazed or something like that, but the water retention that this field benefits from is no longer happening. So let's look around this area a little bit more and see what else we can see. You can see these deep grooves here that show a waterway or a drainage path, which makes a lot of sense why they've left trees here. And then another thing that you can see from this hillside stretched or LiDAR, if I turn off the turn the opacity, let's see, opacity. If I turn that off, now I can see over here, you can see these lines throughout all these fields, and that's indicative of plowing. So at some point, you can tell the fields have been plowed. And this field right here, this area right here has been plowed in the past, but it is now covered in trees. So let's go back to this. So we can see it's covered in trees, and I can also tell that it's been plowed. And I may want to try to figure out why. Sometimes it's because there's a lot of curvature or angle to the soil. Like over here, you wouldn't want to plow this because you can tell there's definite hillside here. But it's a little harder to tell here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring up those contours again. And now I can see that this area is actually quite flat, but there's a drainage way through here. And that drainage way comes from up here. And so this area, because it's so flat, likely floods oftentimes. And what may have been happening is this area was eroding away. So at some point, some intelligent farmer decided they should let the forest grow back over to hold the soil in place so that as water comes through here, they're not getting constant erosion and mudslides and other issues like that. And the forest is actually going to soak up and use that water a lot better. So another really interesting find and thing that we can tell by using these three tools together on this mapping system. So we're coming over here to look at another interesting feature. This is a low-lying area, which you can tell because of the swale or because of the contours. But without the contours, it's not as apparent that this is a lower-lying area. It actually, without any of this stuff, I actually assumed that it was a hill. And so when I started digging a little deeper, it's actually a low-lying swamp area. And when it's just the satellite imagery, you can't tell that there's any roads or pathways or anything through here. But if I turn on the LiDAR, pull that back up, you can see that road, which is pretty apparent. You can see this road. You can see a road going different directions. These may be old logging roads, but these can be really important. If you find these on your property, they may be something that you could just take a bush hog down and clear out, where it's not very visible that it's there. But once you know that it's there, it can be easily cleared to give you access to, say, the backside of your property. You can also see some other interesting artifacts here, like these. I don't really know what this is, but it looks like a pond to me. This also looks like a pond. Likely it was one drained into the other a long time ago. Um, this is clearly a large pond. You can see this large indentation with the LiDAR over this large area. So I'm going to switch back to a more traditional view. Well, with the view here, you can't see much, but if I pull this up, it shows that these areas that we were seeing as being low-lying areas are truly low-lying areas with potential swamp through kind of this area. And so these trees are probably doing a lot to mitigate the water runoff from a lot of these surrounding farms, which you can see are draining into that area. So again, more really useful data for looking at a homestead, whether it's yours, one that you're wanting to buy. This can be a really powerful tool. So I hope that all helped you a lot and you learned something from it. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. Plus, I have lots of other really helpful videos, so it probably will help you out too. Thanks for watching.